Good morning and welcome to Daily Tanya. Today is Wednesday, the 11th day of Sivan. We continue chapter 3 in Shar, Haychud, VA'Amuna, part of the Tanya that talks about the unity of God. So let's begin with tzedakah. Gadayla tzedakah, shemekareves es ha'geula. So we learned yesterday about the reality, the true reality beneath the surface, the physical surface that we see. Hashem's creation, we only see the physical part, but of course there is the godly energy that animates every single moment that Hashem creates the world. And today the Alter Rebbe continues explaining this using the analogy of the sunlight. We go out today, Baruch Hashem, a beautiful day outside, we enjoy the sunlight. And the question is the sunlight, does the sunlight exist within the sun itself? Obviously it's there. If the sunlight is here, certainly it is in its source, in the sun, in the globe of the sun. However, in the globe of the sun, the sunlight does not exist as a separate entity. It is completely nullified within the sun itself. So the same thing, the Alter Rebbe uses this analogy to explain to us that we are completely nullified within the source of the energy, the Hashem's, the speech of Hashem. As we said, God uses the breath of his mouth, so to speak, to constantly create us. So we are existing, we have the feeling of self-existence, just like the sunlight. When you see the sunlight in the room, it seems like a separate entity because the source is not here. But within the source, it's completely nullified. So from our perspective, when we don't see the source, we see ourselves as separate entities. But the truth is we are completely nullified. Now, it doesn't mean that we are not real. Unlike some mystics, not Jewish mystics, some Eastern mystics think that the whole world is an illusion. It's not an illusion. It is God's creation. But the illusion is that we are self-existing. We are used to think because we live in the material world, and our starting point is seeing the world from the material point, from the physical point. We don't see the world the same way as angels see the world. Angels see it in a much deeper way. And even the spiritual is also a creation of God. So let's see what the Alter Rebbe says inside. Continues the Alter Rebbe in chapter 3, Shar, Haychud, VA'Amuna. והמשל הזה הוא האיר השמש המאיר לארץ ולדברים. An illustration of this is the light of the sun which illumines the earth and its inhabitants. שהוא זיו ואויר המספשט מגוף השמש ונראה לעין כל מאיר על הארץ בחלל העולם. This illumination is the radiance of the light which spreads forth from the body of the sun and is visible to all as it gives light to the earth and the expanse of the universe. Beautiful sunlight everywhere. Everyone enjoys. Says the Alter Rebbe, does this sunlight exist within the sun itself? Of course it does. והנה זה פשוט שאויר וזיו הזה ישנו גם כן בגוף וחומר כדור השמש עצמה שבשמיים. Now it is obvious that this light and radiance is also present in the very body and matter of the sun globe itself. in the sky. שאם מספשת למאיר למאורך כל כך, כל שכן שיוכל לאיר במקום הממש. Because if it can spread forth and shine to such a great distance, then certainly it can shed light in its own place. However, in its own place, it does not exist as a separate entity. It is nullified to the sun globe itself. However, there, in its own place, this radiance is considered naught and complete nothingness. Because it is absolutely non-existent in relation to the body of the sun globe, which is the source of this light and radiance. As much as this radiance and light is merely the illumination which shines from the body of the sun globe itself. Since the sun's light is merely an illumination deriving from the sun, it is in a state of complete nothingness while it is found within the sun globe itself. One cannot say that within the body of the sun there is sunlight. Only the sun itself is found there. Where do we find the sunlight? Where can we say that here is the sunlight? Only outside of the sun. רק בחלל או אילום תחת כל השמיים. ועל הארץ שאין כאן גוף כדור מציאות השמש. גוף כדור השמש במציאות. It is only in the space of the universe, under the heavens and on the earth, where the body of the sun globe is not present, and all that is seen is but an illumination that emanates from it. Here we can point and say, here is the sunlight. נראה כאן האור והזיו הזה ליש ממש לאין כל, ונפל עליו כאן שם יש באמס. Only here that is the light and the radiance appears to the eye of all beholders to have actual existence. And here the term existence, yesh, can truly be applied to it. שאין כן כשהוא במקורי, בגוף השמש, אין נפל עליו שם יש כלל, רק שם אין ואפס. Whereas when it is in the source, in the body of the sun, the term existence cannot be applied to it at all. It can only be called not and non-existent. כי באמס הוא שום לעין ואפס ממש. Because there it is indeed not and absolutely non-existent. שאין מאיר שום רק מקור לבד, שהוא גוף השמש המאיר ואפס בלעדי. Because there, in the sun globe, only its source, the luminous body of the sun, gives light, and there is nothing besides it. So this is the analogy the Alter Rebbe says, that similarly all the entire creation is completely nullified and non-existent in the presence of the source, which is God's energy that comes from the breath of his mouth. וכדבורים האלה ממש בדמוסם כצלמם עם כל הברואים לגבי שפע האלוקים מרוח פיו השפע עליהם ומעבר איסם והוא מקרים. The exact parallel to this illustration is the relationship between all created beings and the divine flow of the life force that emanates from the breath of his mouth. The speech of Hashem creates the world, as we spoke in the last two lessons, which flows upon them and brings them into existence and is their source. והם עצמם אינם רק כמו אור וזיו, מספשת מן השפע ורוח השם השפע However, the created beings themselves, they are merely like a diffusing light, an effulgence from the flow and spirit of God, which issues forth from Him and becomes clothed in them and brings them from not into being. And therefore, ein betelim b'metzius לגבי מקורם, כמו אור השמש שבטל במציאות, זה נחשב לעין ואפס ממש. Therefore, says that their existence is nullified in relation to their source, just as the light of the sun is nullified and is considered not an utter nothingness. ואינו נקרא בשם יש כלל קשור במקורוי, רק תחת השמיים שאין שם מקור. And is not, they're not at all referred to as existing when it is within the source. It is only beneath the heavens where its source is not present. There, the sunlight is considered existing. Kach kol habruim, same thing is true with all entire creation. Ein neufel aleim shem yesh klal elo le'enei basar shalana. In the same manner, the term existence can be applied to all created things only as they appear to our corporal eyes, because we don't see the source. So that's why we consider everything as independent existence. For we do not see nor at all comprehend the source, which is the Spirit of God that brings them into existence. Therefore, since we don't see nor comprehend their source, therefore it appears to our eyes that the physical materiality and tangibility of created things actually exist, meaning as separate existence. Just as the light of the sun appears to exist fully when it is not within its source and is found within the expanse of the universe. However, the Alter Rebbe concludes this chapter with a question, a very strong question. And he says, if the light of the sun doesn't exist within its source, why? Because the source, within the source, it's completely nullified. It can only exist outside of the source. And the same thing is us. We exist only because we're not in the source, which is Hashem's energy and the breath of His mouth. We only exist outside. And I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. The question is, isn't Hashem everywhere? The source is everywhere. God is everywhere. So the question is, how do we exist? How are we not nullified within Hashem's existence, just like the sunlight is nullified within the sun? That's the question. But in the following respect, the illustration is apparently not completely identical with the object of comparison. Because in the illustration, the source, which is the sun, is not present at all in the expanse of the universe. And upon the earth, where its light is seen as actually existing. By contrast, all created beings are always within the source, within their source. What is their source? The divine activating force, which is continuously found within them, constantly creating them and animating them ex nihilo, something from nothing, because we don't have a self-existence. The only thing is we don't see it. We don't see the source. It is only that the source is not visible to our physical eyes. So the question is, how come, being that the source is here, just we don't see it, so how come we're not completely nullified? Why are they not nullified in their source? And Alter Rebbe concludes this chapter and says, to understand this, we need to preface. We need to start with a whole explanation about the concept. The idea, what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, is the idea of God's ability to contract himself, to contract his light, and that will be in the next few chapters. To understand this, some prefatory remarks are necessary. The Alter Rebbe will go on to explain that the divine power of concealment and contraction is responsible for hiding God's light so that it will not be perceptible to created beings. This enables creation to be perceived as possessing existence, whereas in reality it is totally nullified within its source. And this is very unusual that the Alter Rebbe would finish with a question. When you're talking about God's existence, our existence, finishing with a question is not always a good thing. However, here the question is not whether God exists. Here the question is, how come we exist? A question like this you can go to sleep with. Let us ponder. Let us ponder about and think about waking up in the morning and saying, how come we exist? If we know the true reality is Hashem is everywhere, how come we exist? So in the next few chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain these deep concepts. Again, the concept of Hashem's unity, that Hashem is everything and everywhere. Thank you for joining me. Hashem will continue tomorrow.